am live. Had a few days break. I'm reading Travels with My Aunt. I'm now in the second part of this book. This is Greene's novel, published in 1969, about Henry Pulling, a retired bank manager who meets his Aunt Augusta after 50 years at his mother's funeral. He is now, he's been traveling with his aunt, but he hasn't seen her. It keeps interrupting again. He hasn't seen her for a while, but they are going to meet in Panama, and he is on his way to Panama. This is the third chapter of the second part. It was 2 days later that we came to Formosa, on a day which was as humid as all the others had been. The heat broke on the cheek like little bubbles of water. We had turned off the great Paraná River the night before near Corrientes, and now we were on Paraguay. 50 yards across the water from the Argentinian Formosa, the other country lay, sodden and empty. The import-export man went ashore in his dark city suit, carrying a new suitcase. He went with rapid steps, looking at his watch like the rabbit in Alice in Wonderland. It certainly seemed an ideal town for smugglers, with only a river to cross. In Paraguay, I could see only a crumbling hut, a pig, and a small girl. I was tired of walking the deck, so I went ashore too. It was a Sunday, and quite a crowd had collected to see the boat come in. There was a pervading smell of orange petals, but it was the only sweet thing about Formosa. One long avenue was lined with oranges and trees bearing rose-colored flowers, which I learned later to be lapachos. The side streets petered out a few yards away into a niggardly wild nature of mud and scrub. Everything to do with government business, justice or amusement lay in the one avenue. A tourist hotel of grey cement on the water's edge had been half built. For what tourists? Little shops selling Coca-Cola, a cinema which advertised an Italian Western, 2 hairdressers, a garage with 1 wrecked car, a cantina. The only house of more than 1 story was the hotel, and the only old and beautiful building in the long avenue proved as I came closer to The only house of more than 1 story was the hotel, and the only old and beautiful building in the long avenue proved as I came closer to it to be the prison. There were fountains all down the avenue, but they didn't play. The avenue must lead me somewhere, I thought, but I was wrong. I passed a bust of a bearded man called Urquiza, who, judging from the carved inscription, must have had something to do with liberation. From what? And ahead of me, I saw rise above the orange trees and the lapachos a marble man upon a marble horse, who was certainly General St. Martin. Buenos Aires had made me familiar with his features, and I had seen him upon the seafront on Boulogne too. The statue closed the avenue as the Arc de Triomphe closes the Champs-Élysées. I expected some further avenue beyond, but when I reached the statue, I found the hero sat on his horse in a waste of mud at the furthest limit of the town. No strollers came so far, and the road went no further. Only a starving dog, like a skeleton from the Natural History Museum, picked his way timorously across the dirt, and the rain pools towards me and St. Martin. I began to walk back. If I describe this ignoble little town in such details, it is because it was the scene of a long dialogue I held with myself, which was only interrupted by a surprising encounter I had I had begun, as I passed the first hairdresser, to think of Miss Keene and her letter of shy appeal, which surely deserved a better response than my brief telegram. And then, in this humid place, where the only serious business or entertainment was certainly crime, and even the National Bank had to be defended on a Sunday afternoon with a guard with an automatic rifle, I thought of my home in Southwood, of my garden, of Major Charge trumpeting across the fence, and of the sweet sound of the bells from Church Road. But I remembered Southwood now with a kind of friendly tolerance, as the place which Miss Keene should never have left, the place where Miss Keene was happy, the place where I myself no longer belonged. It was as though I had escaped from an open prison, had been snatched away, provided with a rope ladder and a waiting car, into my aunt's world, the world of the unexpected character and the unforeseen event. There the rabbit-faced smuggler was at home, the Czech with his 2 million plastic straws, and poor O'Toole busy making a record of his urine. I passed the end of a street called Rua den Furnace, which petered away, like all the others, into no man's land, and I stayed a moment outside the governor's house, which was painted with a pink. On the veranda were 2 unoccupied chaiselongs, and the windows were wide open on an empty room with a portrait of a military man, the president, I suppose, and a row of empty chairs lined up against the wall like a firing squad. The sentry made a small movement with his automatic rifle, and I moved on towards the National Bank, where another sentry made the same warning movement when I passed. That morning in my bunk I had read Wordsworth's great Ode at Palgrave's Golden Treasure. Palgrave, like Scott, carried signs of my father's reading in the form of dog-eared pages, and knowing so little about him, I had followed every clue, and so learned to enjoy what he had enjoyed. Thus, when I first entered the bank as junior clerk, I had thought of it in Wordsworth's terms as a prison house. What was it my father had found a prison, so that he double-marked the passage? Perhaps our home and my stepmother and I had been the warders. One's life is more formed, I sometimes think, by books than by human beings. It is out of books one learns about love and pain at second hand. Even if we have the happy chance to fall in love, it is because we have been conditioned by what we have read. And if I had never known love at all, perhaps it was because my father's library had not contained the right books. I don't think there was much passionate love in Marion Crawford, and only a shadow of it in Walter Scott. I can remember very little of the vision preceding the prison house. It must have faded very early into the light of common day. But it seemed to me, as I put Palgrave down beside my back bunk and thought of my aunt, that she for one had never allowed the vision to fade. Perhaps a sense of morality is the sad compensation we learn to enjoy, like a remission for good conduct. In the vision, there is no morality. I had been born as a result of what my stepmother would have called an immoral act, an act of darkness. I had begun in immoral freedom. Why then should I have found myself in a prison house? My real mother had certainly not been imprisoned anywhere. It's too late now, I said to Miss Keene, signalling to me desperately from Coffee Fontaine. I am no longer there. Where do you think I am? Perhaps we might have comforted ourselves once, and been content in our prison cell. But I am not the same man you regarded with a touch of tenderness over the tatting. I have escaped. I don't resemble whatever identikit portrait you have of me. I walked back towards the landing stage and looked behind me. I saw the canine skeletons on my tracks. I suppose to that dog any stranger represented hope. "Hi, man," a voice called. "You in number 1 hurry?" And Wordsworth was suddenly there, a few yards away. He had risen from a bench beside the bust of the liberator, Urquiza, and advanced towards me with both hands out, and his face slashed open with a wide wound of his grin. "Man, you not forget old Wordsworth?" he asked, wringing both my hands and laughing so loudly and deeply that he sprayed my face with his happiness. "Why, Wordsworth," I said with equal pleasure, "what on earth are you doing here?" "My little baby girl," he said. "She tell me go off Formosa and wait for Mr. Pullen come." I noticed that he was every bit as smartly dressed now as the rabbit-nosed importer, and he too carried a very new suitcase. "How is my Aunt Wordsworth?" "She pretty okay," he said, but there was a look of distress in his eyes, and he added, "She dance one hell too much. I'd tell her she no baby girl no more. If she no stop, man, she got me real worried." "Are you coming on the boat with me?" "I sure am, Mr. Pullen. You left everything to old Wordsworth. I know the customs fellows in Asuncion. Some good guys, some bad like hell. You let me talk. We don't want to know humbug." "I'm not smuggling anything, Wordsworth." The noise of the ship's siren summoned us, wailing up from the river. "Man, you left everything to old Wordsworth. I just gonna took a look at that boat, and we shall see. Real bad guy there. We've got to be careful." "Careful of what, Wordsworth?" "You in good hands, Mr. Pullen. You let old Wordsworth be now." He suddenly took my fingers and pressed them. "You've got that picture, Mr. Pullen?" "You mean of the Freetown Harbour? Yes, I've got that." He gave a sigh of satisfaction. "Ah, luck you, Mr. Pullen. You always straight with old Wordsworth. Now, you go for boat." I was just leaving him when he added, "You got CTC for Wordsworth?" And I gave him what coins I had in my pocket. What trouble he might have caused me in that dead old world of mine. I was overjoyed to see him now. They were carrying the last cargo onto the ship, through the black iron doors open in the side. I made my way through the steerage quarters where women with Indian faces sat around, suckling their children, and climbing the rusty stairs to the first class. I never noticed Wordsworth come on board, and at dinner he was nowhere to be seen. I suppose that he was travelling in the steerage and saving for other purposes the difference in the fare, for I was quite certain that my aunt would have given him a first-class ticket. After dinner, O'Toole suggested a drink in his cabin. "I've got some good bourbon," he said, and though I have never been a spirit drinker, preferred a glass of sherry before a meal or a glass of port after it, I accepted his invitation gladly, for it was our last night together on board. And I stop this here.